continuing completed classics, fulfilling failed franchises, reinvigorating reviled rehashes. It's the follow-up Showdown with Paul Goetz, Travis McMaster, and Lauren Picardi.
Hello and welcome back to the follow-up Showdown 2 Nerds in Quarantine, where we continue to give worthy second chapters to the stories that don't have them. I am your host who will attempt to keep today's show moving at a brisk 88 miles per hour, Paul Goetz. I would normally be joined by my co-hosts, Travis and Lauren, but they are currently moving a United States length away from me to Durham, North Carolina, and so could not be here. However, you shan't be missing them too long. More on that later. If this is the first time you're joining us, we are normally a podcast that takes movies with no sequel or a disappointing one, and each take a turn coming up with our ultimate continuation until a winner is chosen. But today is a very special day in which we will instead be doing what so many people in the world have been clamoring for years and presenting a fourth chapter to the already basically perfect Back to the Future trilogy. And as an added bonus to that, while we would normally vote amongst ourselves, this time we'll be leaving it up to you, the listeners, to choose the best sequel for us. Great Scott! Now, why is there such a burning desire to return to this particular franchise? Well, let's ask the folks whose choice it was to take on that mission. 3 members of the fast, funny, and fleet-footed St. Louis-based improv team Recipes for Ice. Please welcome Robert Doyle.
It's me. Hello, everyone.
Adam Grun.
Hello.
And returning for the first time since obliterating the Christmas competition with her While You Were Sleeping prequel pitch, my sister, Lauren Goetz.
Hey, Paul sucks.
Thanks so much for being here.
That was a great pause there. Well,
excellent.
What's the key to comedy, Robert? Ask me what the key to comedy is.
Timing.
Well, it's wonderful to have you guys. This is going to be a great show. So let's get right into it. Why? I don't know who it was. Why did you guys pick this as the movie you wanted to do for the show?
I love Back to the Future. Absolutely love it. And for me, I really kind of wanted to redeem the second one. I know that the second one has a lot of exposition that has to go in, but that one always has been for me kind of a letdown. So I know, right? I love the third one. Something about the third one is amazing to me, but that second one I've always been kind of But neither here nor there. I am going to add on to and create that fourth one, not redo the second one.
Yeah.
Because it still needs to be there.
Interesting mission you're on, Adam.
Right?
With a twofold goal. Okay, well, so anybody else want to share any feelings about the first Back to the Future?
I saw it when it first came out.
Me too. In the theaters.
Right?
Wow.
So at that time, I was in high school.
Wow. Holy cow. You were Marty McFly at the time.
I was Marty McFly, total nerd. So
holy
yeah,
cow.
so I've known about these shows for a long. So when you talked about doing this, I was like, yep, that'll work.
So you were more, if you were a nerd, you were more George McFly.
Yeah, I was a little. I would say I wasn't quite that nerdy. I wasn't textbook nerdy. I was hung around the nerds and did get decent grades, but I wasn't building things in my basement.
But were you in a rock band?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, my family was my brothers and sisters are in the rock band. I wanted to be the singer.
Oh, so nice. Oh yes, I've heard you got pipes, man. I'm sure you would have rocked. Yeah, I do remember seeing at least specifically the third one with Lauren and my dad in the theater. So I do remember at least catching that one then. And I must have seen the second one in the theater too because they came out the same year.
Yeah, I remember wanting a hoverboard so bad. Why didn't those exist yet? Yeah.
And why?
Nope.
They still don't. Yeah. Okay. So I can't believe I would even have to say this, but for anyone who hasn't seen this movie, it's time to get into a minute with McMaster. So let's cut to Travis having recorded it from the road on the way to North Carolina, breaking down everything that happens in the movie in 1 minute.
A minute with McMaster.
Okay, we are currently about 90 minutes outside of Albuquerque. I'm going to attempt Back to the Future McMaster Minute. Marty McFly is a typical high school teenager in Southern California who is inexplicably friends with a senior citizen inventor who tells him that he has invented a time machine and put it in a DeLorean. After a successful test with the dog, some terrorists show up to kill Doc Brown because he screwed them over to get the plutonium that powers his time machine. After a little bit of chasey-shooty, Marty ends up in the time machine going back to 1955, 30 years earlier, accidentally running afoul of his parents, skunking his own birth, and possibly being trapped forever in the 50s. He meets up with a much younger Doc Brown who has to help him not only make sure that Marty is born once again, but can get him back to the future. And that is one McMaster Minute.
Okay, thank you, Travis.
My God.
Well done.
Insightful.
Knocked that one out of the park,
That's
as
right.
always. Mm-hmm.
I got to go back in time and listen to it again.
If only we could. If only we could. So getting into my notes on this movie, the writers are Robert Zemeckis, who also directed it, and Bob Gale. Writing partners for the following films: I Want to Hold Your Hand, 1941, Used Cars, and Trespass, in addition to Back to the Future. I don't think I've seen any of those.
Mm-mm.
And Zemeckis, of course, has famously directed many timeless classics, but also had a hand in writing The Polar Express and Welcome to Marwen, among others. So, mixed.
Yeah. And Zemeckis did Roger Rabbit too, right? I mean, he probably didn't write it though.
Yes, he directed it. Yeah. Oh, and Forrest Gump. I mean, he, man's got hits for sure.
Right.
Like Traffic. Like
what's that?
Traffic in 41 or 19, whatever those were. Never mind. It was. I'm stopping.
Oh, well, it's just Traffic is a different movie.
I was like, wait, what? He didn't write Traffic.
Yeah.
He went off the rails when he did Traffic.
It was.
Yeah, not as normal family-friendly fare.
Go totally different direction at one point.
Well, these guys were writing partners, and they had conceived of this movie back in 1980. It was rejected by 44 studios before being produced finally. The reason being that it wasn't raunchy enough to compete with the comedies of the time period, like Porky's and stuff like that. Which is an interesting thing, considering the one thing you could say about the first one that doesn't stand the test of time very well is the weird sex B-plot, the Oedipus of it all.
And when Biff's pretty horny and forceful.
Right. Yeah. Yes, exactly. All the sexcapades related to that part of the plot, they really seem like a product of the time, specifically. But so it's interesting where things were at that time.
I'm saying it came out the same year as like Breakfast Club, which is completely raunchy.
Yeah.
She put lipstick on with using her boobs. That's pretty raunchy.
It's funny to think that without that being the case, that part of it might not have been in there and the movie could just be timeless perfect. I mean, I don't mind some of it. Like, I don't mind him thinking his mom is pretty, but I guess the line shows up pretty soon after that when he comes up with his plan and stuff.
Yeah, they should have had him in therapy in the future. Yeah. Missed his own mother.
Well, he clearly needed it.
That's episode 4.
Well, the inspiration for the movie came from Bob Gale looking through his father's high school yearbook and looking at a picture of his father and thinking, I don't think we would have been friends. I guess the only way to know would be to time travel and find out. And, so the parents were always very deeply baked into the origins of the story. And what allowed Zemeckis to finally be able to make this movie was the success of Romancing the Stone the movie he directed before this.
Yeah.
Who was in that? Kurt Russell?
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas.
And
Kathleen Turner.
Kathleen Turner.
Oh.
Yeah.
And Billy Ocean sang some of the songs for it. Love me some Billy Ocean.
Alvin Silvestri also did the score.
Oh,
Apparently, Spielberg didn't care much for what Alvin Silvestri did with Romancing the Stone. So he was anti him being involved in this one. And then when shown footage, including some of Alvin Silvestri's score, Spielberg commented, "Now this is the kind of music you need," not knowing it was Silvestri all along.
Switcheroo.
in your face, Spielberg.
Dummy.
Yow!
What do you know?
What do you know?
There's lots of fun, weird Hollywood talk production stories involved in the behind the scenes of this movie, but we don't have time for all of it, so I'm just going to bring up my favorite one. Chief executive producer Sidney Sheinberg suggested multiple modifications to the film, including changing the title to Spaceman from Pluto, because he believed Back to the Future would not resonate with audiences. It's one of the best
Spaceman
titles
from Mars. Wow.
Right. Such a small thing in the movie.
Right? Literally.
When the spaceman get here?
Yeah.
Literally. Like 13 seconds of the film is about that spaceman.
Well, and separate from that, Back to the Future is just one of the greatest titles of anything ever. It's so catchy and clever. It has such pizzazz and explains the plot so perfectly in 4 words. Anyways, so that insane note, Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis didn't know what to do with that because this guy was paying for the movie. So Spielberg intervened, sending that guy a memo that read, "Hi, Sid. Thanks for your most humorous memo. We all got a big laugh out of it. Keep them coming." Knowing that the guy would never admit
It was serious.
It was nice.
In all fairness to that guy, just to play it even-handedly, he did also change what was originally Doc's chimp, Shemp, to a dog named Einstein.
Oh.
As well as change Professor Brown to Doc Brown. So he had some good ones in there, too.
Which one of them decided to fire James? No, not James Spader.
Eric Stoltz.
Eric Stoltz. Yeah, which one of them decided that?
What a perfect transition into the actor's notes here, because really the only actor's note, that we really needs discussing is Eric Stoltz. So the story goes that Michael J. Fox was the original choice, but couldn't get out of his schedule for family ties. So Stoltz was cast instead. It took 3 weeks for Zemeckis to be the one to decide that he just wasn't working out. Wow. So they made things work with Michael J's schedule and added $4 million to the budget.
To get Michael J. Fox was $4 million?
And to reshoot scenes, like it just added production cost. Stoltz claims that he doesn't remember the experience of shooting the movie at all. Fair enough.
He blacked it out.
That's exactly what I would say, too, if I was fired from Back to the Future. I don't remember that.
I mean, in all fairness to Eric Stoltz, he's great in other things. I mean, it's just Michael J. in this movie is
killer.
It's just one of the most likable performances of all time. The perfect person for the perfect movie. And I mean, everybody loves Michael J. Fox and other stuff, too. But if he never did anything else, his legacy would be just as lasting for Marty McFly.
Oh, like when somebody says, "What did Michael J. Fox do?" I'm always like, "Back to the Future." Because
So apparently, and I love this gossip, Stoltz was not well liked by specifically Thomas F. Wilson.
Oh, really?
Yes. First of all, he was method, so he insisted that everybody on set call him Marty McFly exclusively, which. Fine, I suppose. But a sub-story to that is that Christopher Lloyd, once he was let go, said, "Who's Eric?" And they explained who Eric was. He goes, "Oh, I thought his name was Marty." But he supposedly was too aggressive with Thomas F. Wilson in the lunchroom scene and came close to breaking his collarbone. Thomas F. Wilson kept insisting that he play it down, and he wouldn't. So then he supposedly was looking forward to hurting Eric Stoltz during the car scene, but they never got to that part with Eric Stoltz. So he never got his revenge. potential other actors we could have gotten. John Lithgow was the studio's first choice for Doc. So easy to picture his great Scott.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then Melora Hardin, Jan Levison Gould from The Office, was the original choice for Jennifer, opposite Eric Stoltz. But when Eric Stoltz was let go, it was determined that she was too tall next to Michael J. Fox. And so that's what lost her the role. Then, of course, Claudia Wells came in. She retired from acting for a while when her mother was diagnosed with cancer, and that's how we ended up with Elizabeth Shue in parts 2 and 3. Famously, it was not intended for there to be sequels to this movie. It was always intended by the writers to just be a one and done and have that tease at the end just be like a fun last little joke. When it was a huge hit, they came back to do the other ones, and they both said that if they had the one thing they would do different, if they had known they were going to do sequels, is not put Jennifer in the car at the end of the first one, because it resulted in them deciding that there was nothing else they could do but knock her out at the beginning. Which I ultimately think is unfair. I mean, could have come up with something for her to do.
See herself
something
in the second one. See her future self.
Yeah.
And freak out and then pass out.
Now that we've transitioned so seamlessly into the second one, we're going to have to cut away to another Minute with McMaster.
A Minute with McMaster.
Back to the Future 2 picks up right where Back to the Future 1 left off, except now Jennifer is played by a different lady. All three of them go into the future to help Marty and Jennifer's kids. Jennifer is immediately rendered unconscious after Marty fixes what was going to happen between his son and Biff's grandson, Griff. He goes and he buys a sports almanac from his past perspective to win at gambling and make a whole bunch of money. Doc disapproves, throws it away. Old Biff overhears, steals it, follows them, takes the time machine, gives it to Biff in the past, alters the timeline. Everything in 1985 is hellish. He and Doc, Marty and Doc, have to go back into 1955 to get the sports almanac from Biff before he can use it and save history once again. After they do it, right at the climax, as soon as Marty burns it, lightning strikes the DeLorean and it vanishes. Then Federal Express Western Union shows up with a letter for Marty from Doc from 1885, and Marty has to go find 1955 Doc to save young Doc. Yes, Paul, I know that's over a minute.
All right, there it was.
Very good.
Yeah, he sounded a little sad.
Yeah. Well, this is an intense one. Perhaps intense more for Adam than anyone, because he has such a bee in his bonnet about it.
It's not a hatred. It's not a hatred. And I will watch it.
What specifically are your issues?
I think that for me, it wasn't the same feeling as the others. And I don't know what it is about that, but whenever I watch a movie, I always get like a feeling. And I think that it's because I really like when they go back in time and go through that type of stuff rather than going forward in time. So I think for me, and I mean, I get it. I understand why they did it. But for me, I really enjoy seeing, that fish out of water in the 50s versus seeing somebody just, trying to get through the future.
Well, they do also go back.
You are correct. They do. And those are the scenes that I like. But when he's in the future and looking at his family in the future, I'm just like, I don't know. I enjoy watching them go back.
And the only view of the future is dark. Like we never go back to a future that's light and happy.
Right.
Stuff too.
Well, are you referring to the future or the hellscape 1985?
Oh, that's true.
Alternate
That's
timeline.
true. That's right. They come back to 1985, and that's the hellscape. You're right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, the future is not bright. He gets fired in the future and
Right.
yeah, and his dad.
hydrate level 4.
Yeah, and his dad's upside down. What the hell?
Right.
He threw out his back. He threw out his back.
Well, and I assume you guys are aware of the reason why that is?
No.
Because Crispin Glover couldn't do it.
Right, because
Crispin Glover refused to do it. Crispin Glover, famously a bit of a suffering artist, shall we say, feuded a lot, apparently, with writer Bob Gale. Contract negotiations couldn't happen between them, so he refused to do the sequels. So they turned the grandpa upside down and put him in makeup, and then used, of course, the footage from the first one, which Crispin Glover then later sued them over.
Did he win?
He did win. Well, it was settled out of
did?
court, but
Wow.
he won. Yeah, I mean, he was paid.
Well, they used his likeness or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, which it's. I mean, I know. So, well, supposedly Bob Gale also didn't like his performance in the first one. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think he brings something unique and special,
Especially the laugh.
for sure.
You keep your damn hands off her.
Yeah.
What is with the guy in the future who's like, comes up and he's like, donate to the clock tower? I'm like, what? It looks like somebody in makeup that they like put prosthetics on their face. And why didn't they just use a real old person?
Wasn't that the guy that's the voice of Roger Rabbit?
Oh, really? That actor?
Maybe.
I think that
Looks like him, yeah.
I could be wrong.
I mean, I guess it might have just been we're friends. How
That's
do I
what-
get you
yeah.
in the movie? I want to wear a bunch of makeup too. How do we make that happen?
Right.
Speaking of Roger Rabbit, it's funny because there was a point when it looks like they go through the same tunnel that they go through Toontown.
Oh yeah, yeah. When they're getting into
Smile,
the future.
dog,
Like,
yes, smile. Sorry, I know a lot about Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
It's a good one.
Yep.
And it's got John.
Oh, yeah.
Or it's got Doc.
Christopher Lloyd.
Oh yeah, and another great role. Man, what an actor!
He's
What a talent.
awesome.
National treasure.
And for his age, still looking pretty good.
Yep.
Still pretty spry. All right. Well, how do the rest of you feel about 2? What are your rankings on these 3?
I mean, yeah, I think it's probably
1-3-2 for me.
1, 2, yeah.
Same for Robert.
Yeah, but I feel like 2 is sort of necessary.
Oh, I agree.
Oh, yeah.
So
I would say, generally speaking, I think the accepted feeling on these movies is that the ranking is 1, 2, 3. 3 has some sort of a stink on it from somewhere. I believe. I mean, in comparison, I think it is a beloved trilogy, but I believe that the third is the most regaled. And transitioning into Back to the Future 3, but real quick, we got to shoot over to Travis one
love
more
them.
time for another minute with the We love these.
Oh, hi, Paul. I am in my hometown, my childhood hometown of Wichita, Kansas, and this is going to be a very special McMaster Minute. Back to the Future 3 style. Go. Back to the Future 3 picks up right where Back to the Future 2 leaves off. Marty runs into town, meets up with 1955 Doc right after he has sent Back to the Future 1 Marty back to the future, and he tells him the whole story of the second movie. Doc doesn't believe him, but then he does, and then they use the DeLorean that Doc left in the past in 1885 out in a cave. They rebuild it to send Marty into the future, but they discover that Doc dies 8 days after he sent the letter to Marty from Back to the Future 2, so they have to go back to the past to 1885 so we can have a cowboy adventure with Biff Tannen's like great-great-grandfather Buford Tannen. Amazing. And then Doc falls in love with Mary Steenburgen, a local teacher, after he saves her life, changing the timeline drastically. So they have to get away from Buford, figure out how to make the time machine work in 1885, and figure out what to do with Doc's love life. And then they do it. Am I over the minute, Paul? Did I miss anything? Something about remember the train at the end? People say it's stupid. I don't think it is. It's 32 degrees. Jesus Christ.
Wow.
There it was.
That was a good one.
The final chapter.
No, he makes me
It's like
feel
I was
small.
I like how he talked about the plot.
This guy. It doesn't get any better than that. I definitely, the first time seeing the third one, felt like I remembered liking it the least. I think it's because it's the most different in the sense that the second one literally goes over the first one again. So, like, the third one is it's also when you get the least of Doc and Marty on an adventure together, because it's more of a personal story for Doc, and Marty's intention is almost is separate. Or his goal is separate from Doc. So I don't know. I definitely don't think I put that together at the time, but I definitely remember it being my least favorite, and now I have grown.
Yeah, I would probably agree
a deep
that
appreciation
when it first
for
came out, when I first saw it, I did, just because you're kind of expecting it to be more of the same, and there's not that novelty of them going back to the same scenes and doing the same scenes again like they do in 2. But I think when, the love story of it all is kind of, as you get older, is kind of the appeal of it.
Yeah. I also specifically remember both Lauren and I being very annoyed with Mary Steenburgen back in the day and saying to each other, "Damn it!" like, back and forth. But
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, I have since grown so fond of her in general that now I watch it and I go, oh, she's a pro.
Right.
Sparkling.
Yeah, I really enjoyed her this time around. I agree. Like, I think it just all flows together so well as one big thing.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the third one as my second favorite now as of last night. When I saw it in the theaters, I was like, the West. All right. Everybody probably stinks.
Too old.
But yeah,
Definitely they probably stink. Look at Buford Tannen. That guy reeks.
Oh yeah,
what was his name? Tiff in this one? He's still big.
Mad Dog.
Buford Mad Dog Tannen
That's right.
is the third.
I just watched it.
Yeah, how did you, Tiff? That's the name you came up with?
What I thought was interesting was how they had his great grandparents played by Leah Thompson.
Yeah, and Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
It's so then is his wife.
Don't even.
That was a reaction to Crispin Glover refusing to do. He was always meant to be Seamus McFly, and then when he refused to do the movie, they decided, I guess. I mean, they had already plugged Michael J. in as his own daughter,
Right.
So it's
No, they didn't get you a proper hat.
Also, Crispin Glover. Well, George McFly being dead in the alternate 1985 was also an offshoot result of lack of Crispin. But I think that works. I mean, really makes that. I mean, everything. That is such a dark timeline. That is Biff's. Let's just talk about Biff for a second. I mean, we can talk about all Tannens, but first of all, Thomas F. Wilson's performance is stuff of legend.
Yes,
and he gets to do so many, and you'll definitely see this reflected in my pitch. Where my ideas for another chapter of this came from is that at the end of Back to the Future 3, it's already weird enough that at the end of Back to the Future 1, this guy that essentially tried to assault Lorraine is still in their lives.
Waxing their cars.
And then by the end of 3, the very last time you see him is they're all gathered around together. Marty's getting in his truck and he goes, "Nice hat, Marty!" And Marty goes, "Thanks, Biff." Which I love. The feelings in that scene are so specific of Marty having to face this man who he's faced in multiple time periods and has always been a thorn in his side. He's still in his life. It's insane that Biff's still around, but also it's such an interesting character choice to take this person who's so angry and selfish and evil and aggressive, and then when you clip his wings, when you pop him one, he's just sacked. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the best description is for him. But as they show at the beginning of the second movie, as soon as he sees the time machine fly away, he goes, "What the hell's going on here?" And it shows that always teeming under the surface of this lily flower is evil, horrible Biff Tannen, who at any opportunity will kill you.
I think he's a completely sympathetic character. And I'll argue this. When he's leaving his house in the 50s, his grandmother sounds like a total bee.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would agree with you there.
I'm guessing he's sort of a victim of his upbringing.
Well, and
making
you definitely
choices.
get the sense that he is insecure for feeling stupid.
Right.
He is a stupid person, and therefore is as a defense mechanism.
And he just loves Leah
away.
Thompson's character, so
very, very much.
So much.
We'll have her.
But I'm very, very jazzed and energized and curious to see where you guys took your sequel pitches. So we'll start rolling towards them. Before that, I wanted to say, is there anything anybody else wants to say about these three movies?
My thought was how the Jones Manure logo stays consistent throughout all of time. And I'm like,
A timeless business.
Yeah, at first I thought, would it still look the same? And then I was like, you know what? Some of the businesses that start back then have the same, tried and true Jones Manure since 1885.
Well, you're always going to need your manure hauled, I guess. Is that a thing? Does anybody know?
I think manure's got to go somewhere.
Right. So why not in an open truck?
I mean, maybe, I guess you don't see it in the 80s. They're not around that we see past the 50s, at least not in that same business model. The guy who runs that place got a call, hey, we lost a truckload. This guy ran his car into the back of a truck. Then a couple days later got another call that said, same guy, lost another load.
And the first time in the 50s, the guy wanted to charge him $300 for it in the 50s.
That's
right. That's a year's salary.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, man. Poor Biff. Mm-hmm. We really are.
You were right, Robert.
True victim.
It's all in the editing.
Right.
Well, famously, and I mean, it just like everything else related to him becomes less of a fun fact all the time, but the 85 Biff character was based on Donald Trump at the time.
Was? Well,
I think
that makes sense.
Yeah. It fits. His perfect world is burning to the ground.
Their timelines are parallel.
Okay, so real quick, other sequels to these movies that do exist. Of course, immediately following the trilogy, there was an animated series.
Yes.
91 to 92. Featured Doc's whole family, his sons, Jules and Vern, Clara, Einstein. There was the Time Train and the DeLorean. Also, there were Biffs in the past. So, a true sequel in many ways. That, of course, sparked its own comic book series, of course, sort of like The Simpsons. Speaking of The Simpsons replaced the Back to the Future theme park ride, a staple at Universal Studios.
Mm-hmm.
That was so fun, too.
Yeah. The Simpsons ride is great. I am a fan.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I wish there was a world where we could have both.
If we could just go back in time and
ride the ride.
There is YouTube.
That's right.
But also, there is Travis McMaster. Once again, we're going to cut away to Travis McMaster with one of his classic segments of Travis Describes a Theme Park Ride.
Travis describes a theme park ride. Travis describes a theme park ride.
Universal Studios Orlando. Devotees will remember, I went to school right across the street. It was not uncommon to just go to Universal for the day instead of school. Back to the Future was one of those must rides. Every single time you rode Back to the Future. It has been replaced by The Simpsons since, which is fine, but it's no Back to the Future. So the way the ride worked, the theming of the ride was Doc Brown's Future Institute of Technology. Canonically, I guess it would have taken place sometime after Back to the Future 3. Doc Brown had started some sort of research lab based on time travel,
founder and chief inventive officer,
where he would just kind of bop around like the Adventures of Young Indiana Jones.
Doc, on the march.
The famous historical scientists and stuff. In the queue line, there would be TVs everywhere, and on the videos that they would play to keep you amused, that would be Doc Brown meeting Albert Einstein or whatever.
Thomas Edison, master of electricity. The inventor of the light bulb meets the inventor of the flux capacitor. What a moment.
I guess he figured he's fixed the timeline enough at this point. He's pretty good at it. He'll just do what he wants. The line was almost always very, very long because it's an excellent ride. So I'm very familiar with these videos. I'm sure you can find them on YouTube. I encourage you all to look. After you wait through the outside line, you're taken inside the building, where you are grouped into a corral, a pen, 6 people each, and there is more waiting. This room is very nice. It's very air conditioned. There are hoverboards and cool movie props and technology all over. A lot of sound effects that I can still hear very clearly right now that I won't replicate because will sound weird. You watch another little video about the theming of the ride, which is the Biff. 1955 Biff has found his way into the Institute. He's stowed away on some other time travel excursion the Institute put on in the 50s. And he is here to wreak havoc and cause trouble, which he does by stealing a time vehicle.
Help me find Doc Brown's time machine. You know, the flying DeLorean. What's the matter, you chicken?
And bouncing out to Lord knows where.
It seems that Biff is loose, somewhere in time.
So instead of our normal scheduled time travel event, whatever that was meant to be, we are given a brief safety video by 2 crash test dummies, and we are recruited by Doc Brown to get into the time vehicle.
The new experimental 8-passenger DeLorean time travel vehicle.
Find Biff and bump him.
Bump him.
Yes,
That's right.
Bump him.
Bump him.
Which should send both of our vehicles back to the present, our pre-recorded location. Little bit of trivia. The woman who gives you the corporate, this is what's going down,
We are currently experiencing a systems failure in
Future
our
Institute
security
technology
network.
video is the same woman who played in Griff's gang in Back to the Future 2. She had the red contact lens and the claw on her finger.
Wrong, Fly. You got no scrope?
It's her. So there's a little bit of consistency as well. They spared no expense. Once you enter the time vehicle, like I said, seat 6, try to sit in the front row. That's where all the goodies are. The vehicle is then raised out of the room, flying. And you are in a huge amphitheater with 30 other DeLoreans. And there's a giant curved screen in front of you. From here, you blast off into was it Hill Valley in the future? I know you go back to dinosaur times, get eaten by a dinosaur.
It's a Tyrannosaurus. We've been swallowed.
You go to the Ice Age.
Looks like we're headed 1,000,000 years back in time, and that's still down below us in the ice age.
Burned alive in a volcano.
Before that volcano. Hang on,
It's really impressive. After you bump Biff, you both go back to, I guess, the future, the past, at some indeterminate point in the timeline, back to the Future Institute technology.
Back to the Institute.
Biff is arrested by scientists?
Thanks, Doc Brown. You saved my life.
And Doc Brown tells you need to get out of here before you run into your past selves who are gunning into the time vehicle to do what you
Go
just did.
forth, time travelers, and remember the future is what you make it.
Then you exit through the gift shop. If you're smart like me, you bought a Hill Valley class ring. And if you're kind of dumb like me, you subsequently lost that ring. And that is the Back to the Future, the ride.
Hasta la bye-bye.
There it was. That was that.
Balderdash.
Attaboy.
He definitely described a theme park ride.
Oh boy, Robert had some strong anti-feelings.
He
on
was,
that one.
yeah,
Ready to walk out, really.
I mean, dinosaurs, really?
Yeah, I mean, well, he didn't design the ride, but I don't.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
After that, in 2015, because of all the hoopla, rigmarole around the date that they travel to the future in, it became a big thing where it's like, oh, we're there, we're at that future, and the world's not like that. So Bob Gale, Robert Zemeckis, and Christopher Lloyd decided it'd be fun to shoot a short called Doc Brown Saves the World. He plays Dr. Emmett Brown once again, and he time travels to save the world from a nuclear disaster, and as a result, changes the future so it doesn't resemble what's in the movie, and it instead is reality. Supposedly, one of the reasons Robert Zemeckis didn't like the future angle in Back to the Future Part 2 as well is because he doesn't like when depictions of the future are inaccurate. So I guess it really stuck in his craw and he needed to explain.
I mean, it doesn't age well.
No.
However, those lace-up Nikes are pretty epic.
I like the self-drying jacket.
Yeah.
And whatever facial treatment Doc has gotten. Yeah.
And the Max Headroom taking your order at the 90s cafe.
80s.
Which was Crispin Glover.
No.
How did that happen? Wasn't it?
No.
That was the Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was him.
Right. That's true.
Wow.
Yes, that's right. Which is also in that cafe. But the Max Headroom was Matt Frewer.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that's interesting. Speaking of Ronald Reagan, he was offered the part of the mayor in Back to the Future Part 3, and he declined, of course. But he is a huge fan of being mentioned in the first one. And since he was the president at the time, that joke had to be approved by him before it could be a part of it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan, the actor. Sorry, now I'm just quoting.
Never two, though. It's always going to be 1 or 3.
I'm always going to quote. Except for Hydrate Level 4. I liked that you pulled that one out of there, Paul. That was a good one.
Yeah. I love Leah Thompson's Lorraine in the future having she's almost got like a Wisconsin accent. Regular voice.
The makeup was too.
Okay, so then there was Back to the Future, the video game. For this game, Bob Gale, one of the original writers, wrote the story. Christopher Lloyd returned to voice Doc Brown, a young voice actor who could do a perfect Michael J. Fox impression, did Marty. And it followed Marty traveling to 1931 to save a stranded Doc. He gets entangled in a gangster storyline, classic gangster storyline, involving a gangster named Kid Tannen.
Aww.
And as a result of this, the younger Doc, who was alive at that time, falls in love with a rule-obsessed woman. And when Marty returns to 1985, he finds a world completely under her rule with the aid of Doc's technology. And then the rest of the story is Marty bringing Doc back around to the good side. So it's a trip. Not a bad little story there.
And there was a video game on the original Nintendo.
Oh, really? How'd that go? Was it fun?
It did not go well. It was incredibly difficult. Incredibly difficult.
And then, lastly, there were comic books also co-written by Bob Gale in 2016 that addressed all of the following things. How Marty met Doc, how Marty met Jennifer, Old Man Biff's adventures in the DeLorean, the alternate 1985 Biff's rise to power, the building of the time train, Doc's family's adventures in the time train, why Uncle Joey went to jail, and then
yes,
adventures that take place after Back to the Future Part 3 that involve a rival scientist of Doc's who eventually becomes an ally and joins in the time-traveling misadventures. I read all of these in preparation for this for inspiration, but also to try to avoid doing some of the same things. They're okay. I wouldn't recommend it overall. There's some interesting stuff in there. The most interesting thing, which I am stealing for my pitch, is that they have to come up with different ways for them to travel through time. Like Doc has to get to the future before he's built the time train, and so he comes up with elaborate ways of getting to 88 miles per hour. He builds like a steam-powered thing that he knows will fall apart after one use. So then his backup plan when he gets to the future is to build himself like a device that allows him to skydive, and when he hits 88 miles per hour falling from the sky, he will time travel and then parachute into the new reality. So there's cool stuff like that. They get into some really neat areas of the sci-fi stuff, but really what's not there on the page is the humor, you know. So rolling into the questions that prelude the pitches, should this trilogy have a fourth chapter?
I personally would say no, because of the era in which these films were made the time, before all of the new fancy effects that were made, and a lot of the nostalgic practical effects that were used. I love all of that. I love what makes that trilogy it, and I think that if you do a movie in it now, or if you do it now with the technology that's out there, sure, it's going to look phenomenal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're going to really think we're time traveling.
Right.
But I think that kind of takes away some of the fun. This is one of those where you can leave it alone. Like the original Star Wars trilogy. You can leave, you didn't have to make any more other than those three.
Right. Well, and to your point, Adam, like, there would just be stuff that wouldn't work as well because of the times. But it wouldn't be as fun to see Michael J. Fox playing himself and playing his own kids, and then them doing things like aging him down, with CGI.
That's it, right. Yep.
It just wouldn't look right. It wouldn't even look fun. It would almost if they were to do it again, I would almost rather cast different people as his kids rather than try to do that fun, goofy, Mom, is that you? Character.
Wow.
Yeah, I think you just have to have a new storyline with maybe something tied to the DeLorean, DeLorean somehow or something like that, or maybe get a Doc cameo in there, but then you'd have to have something else, like maybe it's a girl or a young woman.
Sure, kind of like what they're doing with the new Ghostbusters.
Right.
Yeah.
Do something like that where it kind of pays homage to the older film, but is a completely different story. I'd be all right with that.
And then even in that regard, if it's not good, it's not so much tainting what already.
Right, it's not soiling the first three.
Yeah.
I think it should be left alone. I agree with Adam and you, because it just wraps itself up so perfectly and leaves it to the imagination for you. And it just ties together so damn well that with all the time between, it's going to be weird. And
Doc's quote at the end, it's such the perfect quote to end that, for Doc to then leave. Oh, what is it? It's just perfect for that movie.
When she hands him the thing, it's like, but it's erased. He's like, of course it's erased. The future hasn't been written.
Yeah.
I do have a little bit of a thing about Doc having so many times throughout the movie warned Marty and everybody else of the consequences of messing with time, and it gets them in all kinds of trouble, and then at the end of the movie, him and his family are just vacationing through time.
Human beings.
Yeah.
Willy-nilly. Almost an escalation of the same thing that happens at the end of the first one when Marty's like, I thought you said you couldn't read the letter. Like, what about all that talk about messing with stuff? He goes, I figured, what the hell? Where it's just like, oh, okay, what the hell? Gotcha. No, no worries.
Yeah, shifting morals.
But of a madman.
I meant you couldn't look. I'm fine. I made a time machine.
You're going to mess whatever I want. I know what I'm doing.
Do whatever I want.
Oh, I said, remember, in the 50s, he was trying to read minds. So he doesn't give a blank about morals.
In a 2015 interview, Robert Zemeckis maintained that no reboot or remake of the film will ever be authorized while he's alive. Or Bob Gale's alive.
Well, but if they're reboot,
until they listen to this podcast.
Right. Hey!
That's right. Your future hasn't been written yet. No one's has. Your future's whatever you make of it, so make it a good one.
Aw.
That
is nice.
It's a good quote.
Yeah.
That sounds like a sound mind worth messing with space and time.
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm off. That's what's the future.
That's right. Get in the train, Jules and Vernon.
Extra fuel for anybody if they can squeeze this into their pitch. Since Zemeckis, Christopher Lloyd, Michael J. Fox, they're all listening to this. If you want to get greenlit by Christopher Lloyd, he has stated that he's always wanted to do one more in which they time travel back to ancient Rome.
Darn it.
Yeah.
No, no.
It just doesn't fit in yours.
No, it really doesn't fit in mine at all.
Maybe.
At all.
Maybe for a second.
last question before we go hog wild with the pitches. Anything that anybody could think of to be gained from a prequel?
I'd like to see how Doc and Marty got to know each other. Like, because they keep like hinting that Marty's kind of bad at school, like he's tardy all the time. Like, I just wonder, like, would he, like, you like skateboarded by one day and the house was blowing stuff out of it, or what? Like, how did that happen?
What parent is going to be letting their, 16-year-old kid hang out with this like old man that everyone in the town thinks is a little crazy? And
yeah, when I was younger, I hung out with a lot of old men.
I bet you did.
In the late 70s, early 80s.
Get in here and let's play Podcheesy. Okay.
All right.
All right, Mr. Gustafson.
Do they ever specifically say if Marty's parents know he's hanging out with Doc? Because I know the principal of the school knows.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they ever bring that up, do they? I'd like to see how Doc found plutonium or uranium. Like what?
Oh, how the
heist?
How he
how do you
from the terrorists?
Right? Like how does that come about? Like, well, there's the internet doesn't exist, so it's not like I can go on there and be like, how do I get plutonium? Like, you can't do that. Like, who does he know that can get him in touch with?
Then he had to look
the
in a telephone
terrorists,
book,
right?
Well, he's
terrorist.
Well, he said that they hired him to build them a bomb.
So was he like a bomb?
And that's how he like stole it. But
but how do they find? Well, I guess terrorists have a network.
I feel like you get the impression that he is he's thought of as like a mad scientist in the town. So I guess word travels to terrorists, and then they.
Well, that makes sense. Okay, never mind. I don't need to see it then.
This guy's
it all makes sense. Yeah. I got it. It's all good.
Yeah.
I want to see him build like the models of the makeups of like how they're gonna get the car to jump. Like
yeah.
It could just be like
he is a very good model maker.
And you want it in real time, just watching the whole process.
Carving, whittling out the DeLorean of that log from Back to the Future 3.
You can put it on while there's a party going on. You can have that playing.
Yeah.
Is he? Where is he? Has he built the mine shaft?
He just made the clock tower.
All right, let's get pitching, everybody, shall we? Is anybody itching to go first?
Lauren is. She's got a whole sketchbook written of like quotes and everything.
I have a PowerPoint.
Awesome. That sounds like me. Sounds like my sister.
Yeah.
All right. You want to go first, Lauren?
Yeah. Buckle up, guys. That's the door closing to the DeLorean.
You know what I do in those situations?
Mine is called Back to the Future 4, The Time Is Now.
Ooh.
And it starts out in the Old West. And Vern, because we know Doc's sons, Jules and Vern. So Vern is very into being a musician. Like, he plays the guitar around town, and he plays at, like, saloons and stuff. And and it would show him playing at these saloons and people just throwing bottles and fighting. And he's like trying to be heard and nothing's happening. So, Vern's like lives with Doc and Clara and Jules. And Doc, who, seemingly you would think would be supportive of any dream any of his sons had, he innocently gives more support to science. He loves science. So Doc and Jules love science. And so he and Doc loved making experiments. Yes. Did you raise your hand?
That's all right. A couple quick questions. How old are Jules and Vern?
Good question.
Jules is the older one. He's like in his 20s. And Vern
is, they're young men.
Yeah, like fresh into college age, like 19, 18.
Okay. So they've already had their adventures on the time train. And they've settled back in the Old West. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
So Jules and Doc love making experiments, and they're working on some together, like in the house. Like Vern comes home, he's like, "Oh God," and like it's there's going to be like a big town fair, and Jules and Doc are getting ready for the booth. They have a booth there. And, they come in, Doc's like, oh, Vern, join us. We're making, and you don't find out what it is yet. Vern just goes in his room, plays the guitar for a while. And so he talks to Doc about how he wants Doc to let him go to the future to 2018 to be able to like play music and get a music career, maybe go to college for music, because he knows that would be a better time than the Old West to like succeed at that. Also, side note, Marty is a music producer now.
Sure.
He's like,
well, right.
Doc, like your old buddy, yeah, Marty could help. And so, so he asked Dad, he's like, Dad, just let me go back to the future. Let me go forward to 2018 and like
they've probably been there.
Yeah. So Doc, I wrote a line, but this is like, anyway, could be worked on. But Doc's like, no, Vern, I've retired from travel, and we've already taken you all over the world in time. We almost forgot George at the World's Fair. Like, talks about, like, how he doesn't want to do that anymore. It messes with time, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So, and he's like, besides, it's beautiful here. The slow, breezy nights. I had that line. The future. So the future moves so much faster, and you miss out on the wonderful things like here. Okay, so then Vern's like, Dad, it's my dream, and I don't fit in this family. It's all about science. And like, then Doc's like, that's not true. I love you, Vern. And then he's like, not as much as science. And then he, that's cut scene. So then you get to the fair, and you get to the fair, and Doc and Jules have their booth, and it's a huge hit. Okay, so Jules is like an apothecary, and he makes like toothpaste, like morsels and soap. And the reason I thought of this is because, as I earlier mentioned, in the West they would have terrible. So I wanted a reason for me to picture Doc smelling okay, and like Clara and like his. So he had like a happier life. Like I didn't want stinky browns. So
right.
Anyway, so like that, but he's like made like these cool like toothpaste things that dissolve in your mouth, and he's got like herbs and stuff. And then Doc made two machines. One brews beer, and one makes soda for the kids. So they're like a big hit. So nice. They're loving it. So meanwhile, during the fair, Vern sneaks into the old barn, whips the cloth off with a train time machine. And then he's like jumps in, sets it to 2018, Hill Valley, California, because Doc only had Marty's old address. He doesn't have, where he could live now. And so he wants to go see Marty, obviously, to talk about like talking his dad, Uncle Marty, because they've seen Marty since they traveled around, talking his dad into letting him come to that time, and also just seeing if he could help him with the music bids. So then you like cut back to the fair, and Doc and Jules are smiling and counting their profits, and Clara's making a speech. She's the town marshal now.
Okay.
Lady Marshall. So all of a sudden, Doc looks up,
changing history for the better.
Look at that, right at the
Oh, wait till I get back to the end, and it's gonna be a moment of glass ceiling shattering, folks.
All right.
So then, Doc looks off, and then there's the train hovering above his house. Great Scott! And then he's like, how? Oh no, it's Vern! Must be on there or whatever. And then it shoots away. So then, Marty in the future, he happens to be visiting his parents at their house. He and Jennifer, though, have a house in Hill Valley, and Jennifer's running for senator of California. Side note. But Marty is visiting his parents, and Marty has two children, Emmy, named after Emmett and George. And Emmy's like a very artsy graphic designer skater kid, And George is like a very plays by the rules lawyer. And they're the same ages as Doc's kid. So like starts with Marty complaining about how the record business isn't what he wants it to be because he'd like to have some new music. And so then you see the TV come on and it's like this pop star that Marty's representing and she's an asshole and like horrible music, right? Or it could be a he, either or a group or whatnot. And their song sucks. And, like, it's real poppy and, like, lame. Then enter his daughter, Emmy, who comes in to tell, like, Marty about her newest project. And she is into graphic design, and she's a skateboarder. So she's kind of like Marty when he was young, but with, like, an artistic side. And she comes in to tell Jennifer and Marty about it. And then they just start, like, telling her, like, I don't think you've been going to class, you know. We think like community college isn't good enough for you. You could have gotten to a university, blah, blah, blah. So she's like got some angst as well. So, Marty's so then she like leaves the house and skateboards off and Marty's in the front yard and then boom, the train appears, right? And then there's Vern, gets out of the train and starts to, tell Marty about like what he wants. And Marty's like, no, your father knows best. Like, this, you don't want to mess with time. Like, look, kid, like, go home. He's like, but your life's so great. You have the girl of your dreams, the job of your dreams. And like, we've kind of learned like Marty doesn't have the job of his dreams right now. Vern just gets mad at Marty. Oh, fine, whatever. And takes off in his time machine. Doesn't realize that Emmy got in the train as well.
Oh.
So then they are both like, have a discussion like, oh, our parents are lame. Like, we want to do this. This is what we want. So then they, like, start messing by going around through time and just going wherever they want and just having, like, a ball. So they, like, go, they go watch, like, the Beatles perform on the roof that one time or Woodstock. And it's kind of scary and gross at Woodstock. They, like, pictured it better. And so they go on all these adventures and they see really cool things.
A very Forrest Gump vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you listening, Zemeckis?
Zemi!
So they go through and stuff. And so what they're not realizing is that they're leaving their imprint at different places. Like they'll leave like one of their cell phones gets dropped in a weird time or something like that. So, basically in the meantime, Doc comes in riding on like a carriage, comes in back in time to see Marty to get his help. And that's what, like you said, which is weird with the comic, a one-time time machine, so it explodes. And then Doc's like, Marty, you gotta help me. Vern, he's gone. And then Marty's like, I know, I saw him. I told him to go home. And they're like, oh. So then they have to figure out how to go back in time. Marty opens up the garage. He's got the pieces from the DeLorean that got hit by the train. They rebuild it. So then they're taking the DeLorean, chasing their kids through time. So then the two subplots that are going on is Biff Jr. is also running for senator against Jennifer. And he wants to turn Hill Valley into a big software industry data mining campus. Okay.
That'd be really good for that town.
Yeah.
I think you just got my vote.
Once again, Biff, the misunderstood, victim.
Well done, Biff Jr.
Manure won't carry that town.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, the parallel. I'm almost done.
Yeah.
So the parallel that Clara is the marshal, and I thought his name was Tiff, but it's Mad Dog. So Tiff is running against Clara for town marshal at the same time in the Old West.
Oh, Tiff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Basically, they come to find out like Emmy and Vern have like left all these things throughout time that benefited all the Biffs. So all the Biffs of time are just doing great, and the world sucks.
Nice. So
they and Doc and Marty have to go back through and fix all of this and get the things before they drop them, before Biff, from all the Biffs. There's going to be so many fun Biffs. get a hold of this.
Uh-huh.
And so they bond together through this experience. And then at the end, there's some heartfelt stuff. And
blah, blah, blah.
And Doc's like, I understand your passions or whatever. And Marty's like, oh, you can be an artist and we need to find a different way for you to learn or whatever. So then it shows at the end, Vern's like in the Old West, and he just they're in their Old West house, and Vern walks in, and they go, you hear like a or whatever, like the train come in, and then they're like, how was school? And Vern's like, awesome. We've been working on some great things with the band too, which reminds me, I have an idea. Cut to a saloon called Drown the Hound at Brown's, and then with a Doc.
Drown the Hound?
Yes, Hound.
Wait, what?
Isn't that a thing, Drown the Hound?
In that time it is.
Oh, I never heard of that. What is that?
Oh, I don't know.
It means what? Get drunk?
Yeah, get drunk.
Get the dogs drunk.
And so then there's the Jules Apothecary's next door, and then Doc's running the bar, and then Vern's playing music at the bar. And then you have Clara ride in, the marshal, with a group of women as her gang.
She's the marshal and she has a gang?
Yeah. And then...
Well, they're her, like, deputies?
Deputies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like that, like the principal rule-following guy in the original. Like, he had a gang behind him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
So then,
a posse, I believe they're called.
like a posse. So then Marty is back to being producer, and he is producing Vern's band. And Emmy is the graphic designer for the label, makes the album covers. So basically Vern can stay with them. And obviously Vern and Emmy have chemistry, right? So they have a whole love situation.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Jennifer's the senator. And then it cuts to, get this, her shaking Mayor Goldie Wilson Jr.'s hand.
Junior.
The third? Goldie Wilson the
third. Yeah.
Or Junior. Yeah.
And guess who it's played by? Billy D. Williams.
Billy D. Williams?
Is the mayor.
He's so old.
So? And he shakes hands
Goldie
with Jennifer.
Wilson Jr. was born in 1985, probably, right? Billy D. Williams can't play Goldie Wilson Jr.
Okay, fine.
He's 90.
I mean, he could be Goldie Wilson Jr.
Yes, he could be Goldie Wilson Jr.
Yeah.
Not Junior.
So,
are we there yet?
So whoever it may be.
Oh, there's more? Okay.
Yeah. So then they shake hands, and she saves Hill Valley. And then little note I have is that anytime that there's a gang with Biff, the Foo Fighters play his thugs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
all right.
That's the end, and then it plays the Foo Fighters covering "The Power of Love" as the credits.
Oh.
Thank you.
All right.
Wow, mine's not quite that long.
Excellent.
I'm not going to lie. I didn't prepare 45 minutes like Lauren did at all.
I like the idea of the stinkiness of Buford Tannen coming up in the debate with Clara, where she's like, if you want a representative who fell into a cart of manure, be my guest.
I will go out and I'll go quickly.
All right, guys, listen to the blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
I didn't cast it with new people because mine has to pick up right after 3 and made at the time where all those actors are still the same age. Because they put... So my pitch is going to be called Back to the Future, Marty Be Good, with a B and then a Goode, like the song, because it always was a side or a thorn in my side that he stole Johnny Be Good from from Chuck Berry. And so it's like, the guy picks up the phone, it's your cousin Marvin, right? And he's yelling to him, and he's like, that new sound, here it is. In my head, it just can't exist for Chuck Berry.
Okay.
Also, Darth Vader can no longer exist for George Lucas because he came to his father as Darth Vader. And now that name is already out in the world and existing before.
In George's writing?
Yes.
Okay.
So it already exists. So now Star Wars is completely different. Star Wars is a flop after one episode. Not one episode.
All because of the name.
Because
wow.
The name of Darth Vader has been so synonymous, and then, let's say that the new name is Lawrence Walkington, right? Or something, right? And now it's no one is scared of Lawrence Walkington. Everyone's afraid of Darth Vader. So to kind of piggyback on what we liked about 2, which we've already talked about, that seeing Marty back in time, seeing himself back in time, we're now going to add a third Marty McFly back in time to convince the other person not to play Johnny B. Good, because that then ruins all of rock and roll music.
Oh, and he's got to do this without himself
Correct.
seeing.
So he's got to get the original Marty McFly that's out there playing Earth Angel. They've got to get him to play something other than Johnny B. Good. So, we're watching him try to figure that out. We're watching him give a different name other than Darth Vader.
That would almost be the harder one to change.
The Darth Vader?
Yeah, how does he get his past self to just sort of offhandedly think
right, and to not be Darth Vader?
Yeah.
There's a lot of holes in this plot line that I have,
but these are the juicy
it's the things that every time I watch it, I think, he just stole Johnny B. Good from him. Now, Chuck Berry, who wrote Johnny B. Good.
Chuck Berry stole it back.
Was that at the time? Had Chuck already started writing Johnny B. Good, and then he heard Johnny B. Good, someone else playing it? Does then that start a whole, Chuck Berry is on the lookout for Calvin Klein and has been trying to find him? So I want him to go back and just fix some of the things that were I think set this, would make history change completely.
That's an interesting take. That's essentially what Star Wars did with Rogue One, which was create a whole movie to solve that one plot hole. So I like, if you're going to go back to the Future, spending a lot of time in the old trilogy.
Yes.
Well, I like it. I mean, that's the whole pitch, right?
Yeah, Marty be good.
Marty be good. Nice. All right. Well, Robert, do you want to finish us out, or do you want to go next?
I'll go. I mean, yeah, I'm ready with mine. I can go quick.
Oh, no. I never let anybody read my stories.
So mine is called Back to the Future for Behind the Times.
Oh, okay.
It is now 2055. It's 2055. Doc and Clara's bodies, they've died, but their personalities are still in this live chat hologram, so we still get to see them. Oh. Better than the Jaws 19 hologram. and so we've at this point, it's 2055. The Brown families settled at 2035. Is kind of when they stopped. They're Jules and Vern. I went with them. They're in their 30s, and they still kind of dabble in the time travel. They know it. They know how to do it and everything. Jules is not as good as in the science department, and he's a little bit hardened by his experiences. He's the older kid. He's a little more responsible, and Vern kind of still delights in it. He's very adept with the science. Goldie is the 85th president of the United States. But Jules decides he's going to go back to 1950s to watch the U.S. get involved with the Korean War. But when he goes back, the time machine is destroyed and there's no way to get back until he realizes 1955, he can get back to a time machine unless someone comes to get him. So he ends up assuming someone's identity. And so then we switch back to it's 2055, and Vern is hanging out with his friends, and they're chatting about how wacky the 2020s were. When suddenly there's sort of a warp, and the president is now Biff Tannen. And Vern's friends, though, are completely unaware, like the movie Yesterday and the Beatles. It's like they have no idea, but for some reason Vern knows because he's sort of been, I guess, gone through all these time traveling.
Can I ask, is Griff as like crazily aggressive as president?
He's probably mellowed a bit. He's mellowed a bit.
Okay.
Mellowed enough to get votes.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Actually, probably that didn't help it. So, so Vern's friends are completely unaware of what's going on. So then Vern Amazoogles, Amazon and Google have merged. So he Amazoogles Goldie and finds out he has died sad and lonely.
Oh.
So because now the timeline has changed. So finds out that he hoped to be in politics, but he was told in 1955 that a man from 2055 said there will never be a black mayor and never a black president. So he gave up.
Oof.
When he finds out who that is, it ends up being Strickland, Principal Strickland. But Principal Strickland is actually Jules' new identity.
Whoa.
So Jules has gone back into 1950. He gets stuck there. So he decides, well, I know this is going to happen in this high school in 55. So he works his way into becoming principal there.
Oh.
So,
wow.
So, and sabotages things in the process. So Vern discovers that Jules has been causing all sorts of trouble, and then he starts to disappear. Well, at this point, his Korean gender fluid lover, Pan.
Yeah, good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you gotta bring the times in. So, okay, so Vern's Korean gender fluid lover, Pan, played by Jake Choi, who's the actor I Amazoogled to, who is a gender fluid Korean actor.
Excellent.
So he's very familiar with the history of Vern, and he sees him starting to disappear. So he goes back in time, and he is able to take with him, he has this morphing technology device so that he can make himself look like anyone else. So he goes through and he thwarts Vern's plan because he ends up being the woman who hands Marty the Save the Clock Tower flyer.
Yes.
He ends up being the terrorist driving the van who's constantly swerving. So the guy can't shoot Marty. Because if you see him, the guy's like, what are you doing? He makes sure the manure trucks are in the right places, parked in the right spots. Mm-hmm. He is also the gambling guy in 2015, who we were talking about earlier, who gives Marty the idea of, getting the almanac. And he's also, in the third one, he's the barbed wire salesman, played by Richard Dysart, who Doc he talks to Doc about, it's because it's weird that he's just holding a piece of barbed wire. And he'll find a lady somewhere or whatever. And then he's also the one that Clara overhears in the train, and then she decides she's going to chase after him. Mm-hmm. So once he gets all that done, he comes back to Vern and finds him fine. Goldie is president again. And then they consider going back to get Jules, and they look at each other and they say, screw him. Just kidding. They go back and they get him. They wait till he's really old before they go get him.
Wow.
I have Billy Magnuson as Vern, so I don't know if you know who Billy Magnuson is. But
nope.
Aladdin, he was the blonde prince, and he was the prince in the other prince that wasn't Chris Pine.
Oh, in Into the Woods.
Night. Yeah. So if you watch the movies now, you can imagine that there's somebody behind the scenes pretending to be.
That's right.
Yeah, I like it. Well, I will start my pitch. I'm going to try to pull a Travis and do the trailer for the movie, but we'll see how this goes. I'm going to try to go fast.
You're asking for it, and now you're going to get it.
Just wanted to take a quick sec to let everybody know that the vocal accompaniments you're about to hear sprinkled throughout the following trailer were provided by Robin Ferris Hansen, marking his second time on the show covering an Alvin Silvestri score from a Robert Zemeckis film after our Forrest Gump episode. Now you might be asking, Paul, isn't this an unfair advantage for your pitch to have? Perhaps. Might just end up being a horrible distraction. But it's my party, and I'll try if I want to. Now, you're in a theater. The lights have dimmed. The following preview has been approved for all audiences. Pop, 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 pop.
Doc's Lab, 2015, night. The familiar place is swathed in darkness. There's dust all over everything. A door opens. A shadowy figure enters. Footsteps. He walks his way into the lab. We start to hear his voiceover. My father was not a smart man. Flash 2, a man standing over the open casket of old man Biff Tannen. Back to the lab. The intruder is now flipping switches, turning knobs. Neither is my son. We tilt up to finally see who this is. He turns around. It's Cliff Tannen, son of Biff, father of Griff, the one that we didn't see in the middle there. He smiles a smile. Guess I'm the apple that fell far from the tree. This means he's smart. Smart Tannen. Jump ahead to 2021. Hill Valley Recording Studio. Marty McFly is looking at a framed gold record of his young self and the Pinheads with their album Too Darn Loud. Marty, you ever think that everything great you were ever going to do is behind you? Jump to him arguing with a other band member. Your problem is you never learned to share the spotlight, Marty. Well, it is kind of designed to only be on one person at a time. Jump to a fancy restaurant. Marty and Jennifer are having dinner. Jennifer, what more could you possibly want out of life? Marty, how about one last adventure? Transformers-esque music kicks in as a gaping hole opens in the sky above the McFly mansion. Jennifer and Marty look up to the sky. Jennifer, I blame you for this. Later, in a hotel room, Marty and Jennifer talking to their kids. Marty, there's something I never told you kids. I'm a time traveler. We both are. Puts his arm around Jennifer. Marty Jr., and I thought being in a band was hard to live up to. A TV report plays on the TV. We take you live to the arrest of Dr. Emmett Brown. Marty, Doc? Cut to prison visitation room. Doc talking to him through the glass. Marty! I fear my family's adventuring through time is causing the collapse of the space-time continuum. We flash to a bunch of their adventures. Doc and his family watching the Apollo 11 launch. Doc and his family applauding for Shakespeare at Stratford-upon-Avon. Back to the visitation room. Marty. Well, the Titanic did crash into my house. We go back to that opening, gaping hole in the sky. The Titanic comes bounding through into Marty's house. Doc. That was your house? Perhaps something else is afoot. We flash to Cliff Tannen laughing maniacally. Ha 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 ha. Cut to Marty and Jennifer standing outside of a fortified door. We hear Doc off screen. Find my sons! This fortified door opens in two different places and two sets of eyes look out. State your scientific purpose! Marty and Jennifer share a look. Then we cut to Marty and Jennifer prepared to jump out of a steampunk-modified-looking biplane piloted by Jules and Verne. They jump. Once the mini flex capacitor wristbands they are wearing read 88 miles per hour, the sky surrounding them disappears, and they find themselves falling through a visualization of time. Doc, once you're outfitted with the proper equipment, you'll need to find what's been changed and fix it in each one of the timeline anomalies. English, Doc. The glowing things! They spot what looks like glowing tears in time. They aim themselves at it and go through. 1985, the McFly home. Marty and Jennifer hide in the bushes, looking at their happy family reunion at the end of Back to the Future Part 3. They watch Biff walk away from it towards his car, and they take special interest in it. We see them peeking in on Biff at his home later. Marty, I can't believe I'm saying this. Cut to Marty and Jennifer addressing Biff in his home. But I want you to come with us. Biff, where? Marty, try when. 1955, Hill Valley High School parking lot. Marty, Jennifer, and 1985 Biff sneak through the parking lot on the night of the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. Jennifer to Marty, that's you in the car with your mother? Marty, it was the 80s. bringing in the announcer. Michael J. Fox. Title, 1977. Marty waits outside the front door of Doc's house. Doc opens it to reveal himself with thick white mustache and sideburns. Christopher Lloyd. Marty points to the mustache. So how long have you had that? Doc. Aha! Another success! He pulls the mustache off with ease and sticks it on the refrigerator like a magnet. He walks over to a dry erase board that reads molecularly magnetized mustache at the top and writes name Marty under the category convinced. Jump to inside of a car. Marty, Jennifer, and Biff are all staking out a situation somewhere. Marty starts to get out of the car. Announcer, Elizabeth Shue. Marty, you better stay here. Elizabeth Shue grabs him by the lapel. No, I get to play the whole time. Marty, okay. Mary Steenburgen. Cut to Marty and Jennifer getting lectured by Clara in Doc's Old West lab. Clara, but don't interact with your other selves. It could be detrimental. Marty, I already know a lot of this stuff. Clara, well, forgive me for knowing much, much more than you. Jump to somewhere in 1985. Middle-aged Lorraine talks to middle-aged Biff bluntly. Leah Thompson. Lorraine, I could never have loved you. There was never anything I saw to love. Then we see 1985 Biff sitting in a car watching 1955 Biff accost Lorraine in that scene with the prom dress. And Thomas F. Wilson, we see 85 Biff grab 55 Biff off of her and turn him around to punch him, and then upon seeing each other, they faint. Cut to Biff and Marty inside of the time machine. Biff's fiddling with knobs. Marty, what the hell are you doing? Biff, sorry, I never been in a time machine before. Marty, I wish that was how I remembered it. We flash around to different out-of-context shots. Jennifer on a hoverboard. Doc and Clara kissing. Marty putting his hand over the mouth of his younger self. 1955 Lorraine decking 1955 Biff. Marty petting and getting licked by Einstein. Clara, Jennifer, and Lorraine driving the time train. And then finally, we go back to somewhere in Hill Valley. Marty and Jennifer uncover the DeLorean. Marty, man, am I glad to see this thing. Jump cut to, they're both inside. Marty starts it up and begins to drive, but the car immediately dies. Jennifer, they were never really well-made cars. Title, Back to the Future, The Tannen Paradox. And then last scene is futuristic lab at night. Marty, voiceover. We've beaten Biff and his family before. We'll beat him again. Marty holds his fist up ready to fight something. A robot Biff stands up from the lab table, builds itself up taller and taller until it dwarfs Marty. What are you looking at, butthead? Marty, you gotta be kidding me.
Back in time.
That's amazing.
That was phenomenal.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, you forgot one thing. Yeah, so with the list of the names, there should have been Billy D. Williams. Hey, Doc Brun. Hey, Doc Brun.
Yeah.
My God, that was great.
All right. Well, does anybody else have any unsung heroes from these movies?
Hit it, Paul Jr.
Unsung heroes.
People with smaller parts that really make it for you every time you see them.
I like that guy in 2 that says he's got his eyes are a little crossed, and he said, I think he stole that guy's wallet. Do you remember him?
Oh, I think he took his wallet.
I think he took his wallet, yeah. Yeah, I've always liked him. He is the man.
Yeah, it's so good.
The bartender that's like, if you're here, you're drinking whiskey.
But then Doc can have a sarsaparilla.
Otherwise, he passes out cold.
Yeah, I also like the guy who works in the diner in the 50s. Give me a Pepsi free. You want a Pepsi, pal? You gotta pay for it. That back and forth. Tab. Can't give you a tab unless you order something. And then he grabs a full cup of coffee from under the counter and puts it there. I wanted to mention Marty's brother, Dave, who, both him and the sister are funny, but this time around watching it, he really tickled me. My favorite line of his is when, at the end, he's successful and he's going to work, and Marty's like, I can't go, the car's wrecked. And he goes, wrecked? When the hell did this happen? Nobody ever tells me anything. I really like that delivery. Normally, this would be the time when we would be voting on pitches, but as I said, I'm going to leave it up to you, the listeners. If there are any of you out there who want to weigh in on which of these pitches should have been the fourth chapter, please let us know. Reach out on Instagram at the Follow-Up Showdown or on Twitter at the Follow-Up Pod. You will also be hearing Travis and Lauren's pitches on what will be a separate episode released at the same time as this one called the Follow-Up Showdown Roadshow, which will include their thoughts on the Back to the Future trilogy, as well as some little road trip adventures while they're moving across America. So, please weigh in. Let us know who you thought should have won. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for being here. Do you guys have any plugs that you'd like to give before we sign off?
We are Recipes for Ice, improv group, and that we are, right now we're Zooming the third Friday of each month. And if you want to find out, we're on Facebook, Recipes for Ice.
I look forward to it every month. It's been an anchor to sanity for me in quarantine. I mean, that might sound like a bit of an exaggeration, but it has been like a really nice thing to count on and to see people use the Zoom outlet for just so well. I think that you guys do a really good job. You didn't let that's the sign of a true pro. Threw some tomatoes at you, you just kept on yucking. Right?
On the next Follow-Up Showdown.
The movie we are focusing on, the 1942 classic Casablanca. Our guest today is David John Seltzer.
He said something about like this is the start of a great friendship.
Right. Yeah, the
very out of character.
Start of a beautiful friendship. One of the great movie lines of all time.